Got water on top of a lot of muddy, silty nastiness. So, you know, it's difficult. Tony's up for it, though, and if anybody can figure it out, I think he can.
The crew has been looking in the wrong place for the longest time. What if the biggest treasure wasn't on Oak Island at all? This shocking question leads the team to Oderin Island, a rugged and isolated place. A researcher named Bill Smith is convinced that the infamous pirate Peter Easton hid his loot here. Now, the crew must investigate a strange pond that could be guarding a 400-year-old secret worth millions of dollars. The Island of Whispers. The journey to Oderin Island was not an easy one. Located a full 10 miles off the southern coast of Newfoundland, Canada, it's an outpost of civilization, a place that time seems to have forgotten. The island is a ghost of its former self, where a lively fishing community once thrived for generations. Only silence and crumbling foundations remain. The wind howls across the barren, rocky landscape, carrying with it the salt of the Atlantic and the whispers of old legends. There are no mighty oak trees here, only stunted shrubs and tough grasses that cling to the thin soil. But as the crew steps onto the island, they'll soon discover those ghost stories might be more than just superstition, because something is watching them from the shadows. It was this very legend that brought Marty Lagina and the Oak Island team to this desolate rock. Guided by researcher Bill Smith, a man who had spent years piecing together the island's secret history,
Mr. Conjecture, get suited up.
Looks like I got another pond, doesn't it?
Yeah.
they ventured onto its shores. Bill, with the unwavering conviction of a true believer, led Marty, Matty Blake, and diver Tony Sampson across the unforgiving terrain. Their boots crunched on gravel and stone as they hiked toward the northeast side of the island. The air was thick with anticipation. Bill had been talking about this place for months, promising a discovery that could rival anything found on Oak Island. He spoke of historical accounts, passed down not just in books, but through word of mouth from father to son for centuries. These oral traditions were the lifeblood of the island's mystery, telling a story of unimaginable wealth. The focus of this incredible tale was a man named Peter Easton. He wasn't just any pirate. He was a 17th century sea lord, an English nobleman turned buccaneer who commanded a fleet of 10 powerful warships. From his stronghold in nearby Harbor Grace, he terrorized the shipping lanes of the Atlantic, plundering Spanish treasure fleets and amassing a fortune so vast it was said he didn't know how to count it all. Historians agree with near total certainty, 99% as Bill put it, that Easton ruled this part of the world. His dominion was absolute. But when the time came for him to disappear, the question of what happened to his treasure became Newfoundland's most enduring mystery. The team finally arrived at their destination, a place Bill had been so excited to show them. It wasn't a cave or a fortress. It was a small, unassuming pond, its dark water still and silent. It looked out of place in the rugged, dry landscape. For Marty, the sight was both familiar and strange. It reminded him of the swamp back on Oak Island, but this setting was far more stark and isolated. The very existence of this pond, in this exact spot, was a puzzle. As they stood on its edge, the weight of 400 years of history pressed down on them. According to the legend Bill had followed, this was no ordinary body of water. He believed it was an artificial vault, a cleverly disguised hiding place for Peter Easton's treasure. But the biggest, most unbelievable part of the story was how it was supposedly built. The legend of the pond was incredibly specific and tantalizingly familiar. The stories handed down through generations claimed that the pond was not natural. It was said to have been dug out by Easton's men and then lined, bottom and sides, with heavy oak planks. This detail immediately sent a shockwave of excitement through Marty Lagina. He looked around at the barren landscape of Oderin Island. There wasn't a single oak tree in sight, nor had there been for centuries. If this pond was truly lined with oak, it meant those massive timbers had to have been brought here by ship, a tremendous effort for a specific, secret purpose. It was a clue that screamed of a major construction project, mirroring the very mysteries they had been chasing for years back home. The theory didn't stop there. Bill Smith pointed out another feature, a barely noticeable anomaly in the nearby landscape. A natural spring was located up the hill from the pond. Bill believed that Easton's men had engineered a man-made flood tunnel connecting the spring to their excavated pit. This would allow them to fill the vault with water, hiding the entrance and the treasure beneath an impenetrable layer of mud and muck. The idea of booby-trapped flood tunnels was the signature of the Oak Island money pit. To hear of a similar design being used here in connection with a known pirate captain was almost too perfect to be true. Was it possible that the same masterminds were behind both locations? It was time to move from talk to action. The man for the job was Tony Sampson, the team's fearless diver. He began to suit up, preparing to enter the cold, dark water. His task was twofold. First, he had to prove or disprove the central part of the legend. Were there oak planks at the bottom? Second, he needed to feel for any evidence of the flood tunnels Bill theorized about, any opening or structure that seemed out of place. Tony, ever the professional, was excited. He had heard so much about this pond, and the chance to finally get in and solve a piece of a 400-year-old puzzle was what he lived for. He knew it wouldn't be easy. Just like the murky waters of the Oak Island swamp, this dive would be done by feel alone. Visibility would be zero. As Tony prepared for his Braille dive, the rest of the team felt a familiar mix of hope and impatience. This was the moment of truth. Years of research and local folklore were about to be put to the test. Was this pond just a natural feature, a dead end in their quest? Or was it a carefully constructed vault, a watery tomb guarding a pirate's fortune? The entire theory rested on what Tony would find in the thick, black silt at the bottom. As he slipped beneath the surface, the pond returned to its placid state, hiding the intense search now happening within its depths. Everyone held their breath, waiting for a sign, for anything that could tell them they were in the right place, that this long shot was about to pay off in a way they could never have imagined. A discovery in the dark. The moment Tony Sampson entered the pond, his world went black. As he predicted, it was a total Braille dive. There was zero visibility. He couldn't see his own hand in front of his face. His only connection to the world above was his air hose and the crackle of his communications equipment. On the surface, Marty, Maddie, and Bill watched the bubbles break the surface, their eyes glued to the water. The silence was tense. Tony's only tools in the suffocating darkness were his hands and his metal detector, which he swept from side to side through the liquid mud. He described the bottom as nothing but thick, deep silt. It was a diver's nightmare. He could push his entire arm right up to his shoulder into the soft muck and still not feel a solid bottom. For long minutes, that was all he found. More and more endless, unforgiving silt. On the shore, the team's optimism began to waver slightly. The pond was proving to be just as difficult as any hole they had ever dug or dived on Oak Island, but Tony was persistent. He moved slowly and methodically, feeling his way across the bottom, his gloved fingers searching for anything that felt unnatural. Then something changed. His sweeping motion was interrupted. He felt something solid. It wasn't rock, it felt flat, with a distinct edge. He ran his hand along it. It was wood. He moved a little further and felt another piece, and then another. It felt like planks, timbers arranged in some kind of pattern. He radioed up to the surface, his voice calm but filled with the thrill of discovery. He had found wood. On the shore, a jolt of excitement went through the team. Wood! The first part of the legend was proving true. Tony explained that the timbers felt like they were part of some kind of box system, perhaps a drainage channel or a crate. He wasn't sure. All he knew was that there was a lot of it down there. He decided to try and bring some of the smaller, loose pieces to the surface. The team watched, their anticipation reaching a fever pitch. After a few moments of struggle in the deep muck, Tony broke the surface, his hands full of dark, slimy objects. He swam to the edge and lifted his haul out of the water. It was a stunning collection of waterlogged timbers. The wood was dark with age and stank of the swamp, a smell Marty knew all too well. But this wasn't just random driftwood. As they laid the pieces out on the ground, they saw it immediately. These timbers had been worked. They had been cut, shaped, and fitted. The ends were cut at precise angles, and then they saw the most incredible detail of all, a feature that blew the investigation wide open. The pieces of wood were notched. They were carved with a distinct interlocking pattern. It was a stunning example of craftsmanship, a clue that pointed directly to a specific time in history. As the team cleaned the mud from the ancient timbers, the true significance of their find became breathtakingly clear. The notches carved into the ends of the wood were not simple cuts. They were dovetail joints. This style of woodworking, where fan-shaped pins interlock with tails, creates an incredibly strong and durable connection. It's a hallmark of skilled craftsmanship, not something you would find on a random piece of shipwreck debris. Marty Blake immediately recognized it, suggesting it could be part of an old crate, a treasure chest perhaps. Tony agreed, adding that the way the planks were arranged in the mud, it felt like they were part of a larger structure, boxing something in. The historical implications were massive. While different forms of joinery have existed for thousands of years, the dovetail joint became widely popular in Western Europe during the 16th and 17th centuries. This timeline aligned perfectly with the era of Peter Easton, who was active in the early 1600s. The team was potentially holding pieces of a 400-year-old structure, built using a technique common during the pirates' reign. The wood itself was a question mark. Was it the legendary oak? That would require scientific testing, but the dovetail joints were the smoking gun. They were evidence of human activity, of a sophisticated construction that had no business being at the bottom of a forgotten pond on a desolate island. Could these be the remnants of a treasure chest? Or even more excitingly, were they part of the very oak-lined vault that legend described? Bill Smith, the researcher who had brought them here, was ecstatic. While he wasn't a wood expert, he could see the clear patterns of cutting and the undeniable dovetailing. For him, it was vindication. The stories weren't just stories. Something real, something important had happened here centuries ago. The question was no longer if something was man-made in the pond, but what it was and how much of it remained. Tony confirmed their hopes. When asked how much more wood was down there, his answer was simple. "Oh, there's still heaps." The bottom was littered with it, but the dive had to be called off. The conditions were too dangerous, and with zero visibility, a blind search for smaller metallic objects was nearly impossible. They had pushed their luck as far as they could for one day. They had found the wood and they had found the dovetails. They had proven the first part of the legend true. But now they faced a new problem. The treasure itself, if it existed, was likely metal. Gold coins, silver bars, jewelry, and it was probably buried beneath all that wood and silt. They needed a way to see through the mud to pinpoint the exact location of any metallic objects. The physical dive had reached its limit. It was time to bring in the heavy-duty technology. With the dive in the pond temporarily on hold, the team shifted to Plan B. They needed to see what the human eye, no matter how skilled, even Tony Sampson's, couldn't. So they turned to a familiar ally: technology. The same advanced tools that had revealed countless clues on Oak Island were now being deployed on Oderin. Drone expert Jordan Bannister arrived with his state-of-the-art gear, ready to assist in the search. The mission was simple in concept, but incredibly complex in execution. Fly a drone over the pond, scan it with a high-powered magnetometer, and hope it detected something unusual, something metallic. This wasn't just any drone. It carried a specialized sensor that could see magnetic differences in the ground below. If anything large and metallic, like say a pirate's chest full of silver, was hiding beneath the layers of silt and muck, the drone would catch it. As the machine buzzed to life and lifted into the sky, it began a slow, methodical flight over the pond, mapping every inch with precision. Beneath the surface, hidden by centuries of decay, lay the answers. The magnetometer was searching for the invisible, a magnetic signature strong enough to pierce the veil of time. After hours of scanning, the drone finally returned to base. But the most important part was still ahead. Now, it was a waiting game. The raw data was dense and noisy, a digital puzzle waiting to be solved. Somewhere inside that data might be the X that marks the spot, and the secret that could rewrite history. They found crafted wood, ancient joinery, and signs of engineering. But if this isn't Oak Island, then who really built the first trap? Let us know, like, and subscribe for more.